There is a version of your life where you spend dramatically less energy on other people's choices, other people's opinions, and other people's behavior toward you. A version where you stop trying to control outcomes that were never yours to control, where you stop twisting yourself into uncomfortable shapes trying to manage how others feel about you, where you stop rehearsing conversations in your head, trying to anticipate reactions, trying to prevent disappointments that you cannot prevent. That version of your life is not a fantasy. It is not a distant goal that requires years of therapy or a spiritual awakening or a complete personality overhaul. It is available to you right now through one of the simplest and most psychologically powerful mental shifts you will ever encounter. It is called the Let Them Rule, and in the next few minutes, it is going to change the way you relate to other people, to situations you cannot control, and to your own peace of mind in a way that is going to feel almost uncomfortably freeing. Let us start with what is actually happening in your brain when you try to control other people's behavior, because most people who do this do not think of it as control. They think of it as caring. They think of it as being responsible. They think of it as being a good partner, a good friend, a good parent, a good employee. When someone you care about is making a decision you think is wrong, you intervene. When someone pulls away from you, you pursue. When someone does not respond the way you needed them to, you analyze, adjust, and try again with a different approach. When someone forms an opinion about you that feels unfair, you work to correct it. All of this feels like love or diligence or self-protection. But underneath it, psychologically, it is the same thing. It is the attempt to manage a reality that exists outside your control. And the research on what this costs you is sobering. Studies on psychological stress consistently identify the perception of low control as one of the primary drivers of anxiety, emotional exhaustion, and what psychologists call learned helplessness. When you spend sustained energy trying to control what cannot be controlled, your nervous system does not just fail to achieve the goal. It degrades. It becomes chronically activated. It starts treating uncertainty as danger. And over time, you begin to need control more and more just to feel baseline safe, which means the world becomes a more and more threatening place the longer this pattern runs. The Let Them Rule is a direct psychological intervention against this pattern. At its core, it is deceptively simple. When someone does something you wish they would not do, let them. When someone chooses not to show up for you the way you hoped, let them. When someone forms an opinion about you without the full picture, let them. When someone makes a decision with their own life that you disagree with, let them. 2 words, let them. But do not confuse simplicity with superficiality, because what those 2 words are doing psychologically is profound. They are drawing a line between what is yours and what is not. They are reminding your nervous system that other people's choices, reactions, and behaviors exist in a territory that was never under your jurisdiction, and they are returning the energy you were spending on that territory back to the only place it was ever capable of producing results: you. This connects to one of the most important psychological concepts you will ever understand. It is called the locus of control, developed by psychologist Julian Rotter in the 1950s. People with an external locus of control believe that what happens in their lives is primarily determined by outside forces, other people's actions, circumstances, luck, what others think of them. People with an internal locus of control believe that their own choices, behavior, and responses are the primary drivers of their experience. Decades of research have established that people with a strong internal locus of control report higher levels of well-being, lower stress, stronger relationships, and greater life satisfaction across virtually every measure. The Let Them Rule is one of the most practical tools ever created for shifting from an external to an internal locus of control. Because every time you say let them, you are releasing a false responsibility that was draining you. And every time you follow it with the second half of the rule, which we will get to in a moment, you are reclaiming the only power that was ever actually yours. Let us talk about what happens to relationships specifically when you apply this principle. Because one of the fears people have when they first hear the let them concept is that it will make them seem cold, distant, like they do not care. The psychological reality is the opposite. Think about the dynamics of any relationship where one person is constantly trying to manage the other's feelings, reactions, and behavior. The person doing the managing becomes progressively more anxious and resentful because the project is impossible. The person being managed begins to feel controlled, even if the management comes from love, and often pulls away or becomes defensive as a result. Both people lose. Now compare that to a dynamic where one person genuinely accepts that they cannot dictate how the other person feels, chooses, or shows up, where they stop performing in ways designed to manipulate outcomes and start simply being who they are. The relationship becomes honest. The space between two people becomes safe rather than strategic. Research on secure attachment in relationships consistently finds that the healthiest relational dynamic is characterized not by the attempt to control closeness and distance, but by the willingness to tolerate the uncertainty of another person's autonomy. Let them be who they are. Let the relationship be what it actually is rather than what you can engineer it to be. That is not indifference. That is the highest form of respect. Now here is the second half of the rule that most people miss, and this is where it becomes transformative rather than just calming. The full rule is not just let them. It is let them and then let yourself. Let them cancel on you, and let yourself invest that energy in people who consistently show up. Let them misunderstand you and let yourself stop explaining. Let them choose differently, and let yourself choose differently too. Let them walk away and let yourself build a life so full and meaningful that the space they left becomes an opportunity rather than a wound. This second half is the active component. The let them is the release. The let yourself is the reclamation. Together they create what psychologists describe as emotional autonomy, the capacity to define your own emotional state, your own direction, and your own sense of self-value independently of what others choose to do or not do. Emotional autonomy is not something that happens to people. It is something that is built through exactly this kind of practiced, deliberate boundary drawing between what belongs to you and what does not. Here is the boundary psychology underneath all of this. When most people think about boundaries, they think about telling others what they are allowed to do. They think about rules they are setting for other people's behavior. That framing is the source of enormous frustration because you cannot enforce a boundary on another person's internal experience. You cannot make someone respect you. You cannot make someone value what you value. You cannot make someone want what you want them to want. A boundary is not a rule you set for someone else. It is a decision you make about yourself. It is the clarity of knowing what you will engage with and what you will not, what you will accept in your space and what you will not, what you will continue to invest in and what you will withdraw from. Real boundaries, the kind that actually protect your peace, do not require the other person to change. They only require you to. And because the only person you actually have the power to change is you, that framing is the only one that can ever reliably work. There is a concept in acceptance and commitment therapy called psychological flexibility. It is the ability to remain present and engaged with your life without being destabilized by the parts of it you cannot control. Research consistently identifies psychological flexibility as one of the strongest predictors of mental health, resilience, and overall life satisfaction. It is the capacity to hold uncertainty, to experience difficult emotions, and to continue moving in the direction of your own values, regardless of what is happening in the uncontrollable territory around you. The let them rule is essentially a daily practice of psychological flexibility. Every time you notice the urge to control an outcome that is not yours, name it, and choose to release it instead, you are training the neural pathways of flexibility. You are building the internal infrastructure of peace, not by changing the world around you, but by changing your relationship to the parts of it that were never yours to manage. Here is something that will reframe every difficult relationship and every frustrating situation in your life if you let it land fully. The people who trigger your need for control the most, the ones who behave in ways you cannot understand or accept, the ones who disappoint you most consistently, the ones who seem to be making choices that make no sense to you. They are living out their own psychology, their own wounds, their own conditioning, their own version of the story you cannot see. Their behavior almost never has as much to do with you as it feels like it does. And the energy you are spending trying to change, fix, correct, or manage their story is energy that is unavailable for writing yours. Let them have their story. Your job is your story. And your story, the actual direction and quality and depth of your life, is written entirely in the territory of your own choices, your own attention, and your own willingness to keep moving toward what matters to you regardless of what anyone else is doing. The let them rule is not a way to stop caring. It is a way to stop suffering over things that were never within your power to change. It is the recognition that the peace you have been searching for in other people's behavior has been available inside your own choices all along. Let them, and then let yourself live. If this shifted something in you today, share it with someone who has been carrying too much of what does not belong to them. And subscribe, because this channel exists to give your mind the tools it was always capable of using.